One morning, Buddha was gathered together with his disciples when a man came up to him. "Does God exist?" he asked. "He does," replied Buddha. After lunch, another man came up to him. "Does God exist?" he asked. "No, he doesn't," said Buddha. Later that afternoon, a third man asked the same question. "Does God exist?" "That's for you to decide," replied Buddha. As soon as the man had gone, one of his disciples remarked angrily, "But that's absurd, Master. How can you possibly give such different answers to the same question?" Because they are all different people, and each one of them will reach God by his own path. The first man will believe what I say. The second will do everything he can to prove me wrong. The third will only believe in what he is allowed to choose for himself. A baker wanted to get to know a great guru in his town a little better, so he invited him to dinner. The day before, the guru went to the bakery disguised as a beggar, picked a bread roll off the display, and began to eat it. The baker saw this and tossed him out into the street. The following day, the guru and a disciple went to the baker's house and were treated to a splendid banquet. In the middle of the meal, the disciple asked, "How does one tell a good man from a bad man? Just look at this baker. He is capable of spending 10 gold pieces on a banquet because I am famous, but he is incapable of giving a piece of bread to feed a hungry beggar."
One day, a young monk approached a Zen master and asked, "Master, what is the greatest value in my life?" The Zen master replied, "Go to the back garden, pick up a large stone, and take it to the market to sell. If someone asks for the price, don't speak, just show 2 fingers. If they bargain with you, don't sell it, bring it back, and I'll tell you the greatest value in your life." The next morning, the young monk took the stone to the market. A housewife came by and asked, "How much is the stone?" The monk showed 2 fingers, and the housewife said, $2? The monk shook his head, and the housewife said, $20? All right, I'll use it to press pickled vegetables. The young monk thought, "Someone is willing to pay $20 for a worthless stone. There are so many stones in our mountain." The young monk didn't sell the stone, and happily went back to the master. "Master, a housewife was willing to pay $20 for my stone. Can you tell me the greatest value in my life now?" The Zen master said, "Take the stone to the museum tomorrow. If someone asks the price, show 2 fingers again. If they bargain, don't sell it, bring it back, and we'll talk." The next morning at the museum, a crowd gathered, wondering about the stone's value. One person offered $2,000 for the stone, saying they would use it to carve a statue. The young monk was astonished but followed the master's instruction to bring the stone back. "Master, someone offered $2,000 for the stone today. Can you tell me the greatest value in my life now?" The Zen master laughed and said, "Take the stone to an antique shop tomorrow, and if someone bargains, bring it back. I'll tell you your life's greatest value." The next day, at the antique shop, people were curious about the stone. One person offered $20,000. The monk was shocked, and the person increased the offer to $200,000. The young monk took the stone back to the master, excited about their potential fortune. "Master, today someone offered $200,000 for our stone. Can you tell me the greatest value in my life now?" The Zen master lovingly said, "My child, your life's value is like this stone. If you place yourself in a vegetable market, you're worth $20. If you place yourself in a museum, you're worth $2,000. If you place yourself in an antique shop, you're worth $200,000. Different platforms and positions bring different values to your life." Life is full of possibilities, and we all have the power to shape our own journey. Like the young monk and his stone, we must remember that our worth is not set in stone, but can change depending on where we stand and the choices we make. Sometimes, we get stuck in places that don't truly value our potential. It's important to step back and ask ourselves if we are in the right place, surrounded by the right people. Are we allowing ourselves to shine, or are we hidden in the shadows of self-doubt and fear? We each hold a unique gift, a talent or a passion that deserves to be nurtured and shared with the world. But to truly find our worth, we must first believe in ourselves. We can't expect others to see our value if we don't recognize it in our own hearts. So, take a moment to reflect on your life. Where are you now, and where do you want to be? Are you taking steps towards your dreams? Or are you holding back due to fear or uncertainty? Remember, it's never too late to make a change and pursue your true calling. For when you believe in your own worth and follow your heart, the world becomes a canvas for your dreams. Your life is a precious gift, and your worth is not determined by others, but by your own actions and the choices you make. Choose wisely, believe in yourself, and your life will become a beautiful masterpiece. This is Take the Leap Motivation. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more future videos.
Once upon a time, in ancient China, there lived 3 old monks. Their names are not remembered today, simply because they never revealed them to anybody. In China, they are simply known as the 3 laughing monks. They always traveled together and did nothing else but laugh. They entered a village or a town, stood in the center of its main square, and started laughing. Slowly but surely, the people who lived and worked there, and the passers-by, couldn't resist and had to start laughing as well. Until a small laughing crowd had formed, and eventually the laughing had spread to the whole village or town. That was the moment when the 3 old monks moved on to the next village. Their laughter was their only prayer, all of their teaching, because they never spoke to anybody. They just created that situation. All over China, they were loved and respected. The people had never known such spiritual teachers before or after. They seemed to communicate that life should be taken only as a great opportunity to laugh, as if they had discovered some kind of cosmic joke. So they traveled and laughed for many years, spreading joy and happiness throughout China. Until one day, while being at a particular village in the North Province, one of them died. The people were shocked and came running from afar, leaving the fields unattended for the day, only to witness the other 2 monks' reaction to this dramatic event. They were expecting them to show sorrow or even cry, and the whole village came to the place where the 3 monks were. 2 alive and 1 dead. But the 2 remaining monks were laughing only harder. They were laughing and could not seem to stop. So that a few of the good people who were assisting to this scene, in disbelief, approached them and asked them why they weren't mourning at all for their deceased friend. And for one time, the monks actually responded. Because yesterday, on our way to your village, he proposed a bet on who of us would beat the other 2 and die first. And now he won, the old rogue. He even had a testament prepared. The tradition required to wash the dead and change his clothes before putting him on the funeral pyre. But the old monk had explicitly asked to leave the old clothes on him, since he had never been filthy for 1 day. I never allowed any of the filth of this world to reach me through my laughter, his testament stated. So the old man's body was placed on the pyre with the garments he was wearing when he had arrived. And as the fire was lit and started licking on his clothes, to everyone's astonishment, suddenly fireworks of 100 colors went exploding up and down and to all directions. And finally, the people who had gathered there also joined the laughter of the 2 wise men. Once upon a time, there was a person coming to a new village, relocating, and he was wondering if he would like it there. So he went to a Zen master and asked, "Do you think I will like it in this village? Are the people nice?" The master asked back, "How were the people in the town where you came from?" "They were nasty and greedy. They were angry and lived for cheating and stealing," said the newcomer. "Those are exactly the type of people we have in this village," said the master. A day later, another newcomer to the village visited the master and asked the same question. To which the master asked, "How were the people in the town where you come from?" "They were sweet and lived in harmony. They cared for one another and for the land. They respected each other, and they were seekers of spirit," he replied. "Well, those are exactly the type of people we have in this village," said the master. Once upon a time, there was a young man who worked at a factory. His mentor, an old technician, taught him to talk less, do more, and never stop developing his skills in every aspect of the factory's operations. 10 years later, the old man retired, and the young man became a technician himself. He continued to do his work with the same dedication and diligence as he was taught. One day, he visited his mentor. The old man saw that he seemed unhappy and asked what was troubling him. The young man sighed and poured his heart out. "I have been following your instructions exactly all these years. No matter what I work on, I keep quiet and focus on the job. I know I have done good work at the factory, and I have learned all the skills that can be learned there. What I don't understand is that the guys who don't have my experience or capabilities have all been promoted, while I am still making as little as I did before when I was your apprentice." The old man asked, "Are you positive that you have become indispensable to the factory?" The young man nodded, "Yes." The old man paced back and forth to think. After a while, he turned to the young man. "You must request a day off, using whatever reason you like. It is time for you to give yourself a break." The young man was surprised by this advice, but the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. He thanked his teacher and left quickly to make a time off request. When he returned to work after his day off, the manager called him into the office to tell him that things did not go well at the factory while he was gone. Others encountered many problems that normally would be handled by him, and they had no idea how to solve them. Realizing his importance, the manager decided to promote him to the position of senior technician, to thank him and encourage him to keep up the good work. The young man was grateful for his mentor's wisdom. Surely, he thought, this was the secret to success. From that point on, whenever the young man felt like he deserved more than what he was getting, he would take a day off. When he came back the next day, the situation would improve to his satisfaction. This pattern continued for months. One day, the young man found that he was blocked from going into the factory. Much to his shock, he found out that his employment was terminated. He could not believe it. Not knowing what else to do, he went back to see his mentor to try to figure out how things had gone so wrong. "Why did I lose my job?" he asked with wounded pride. "Did I not do everything as you instructed?" "Actually, you did not, because you heard only half the lesson," the old man shook his head. You understood right away that no one pays any attention to a light bulb that is always on. It is only when it goes off that people suddenly take notice and realize they've been taking it for granted. You were so eager to apply this understanding that you left before hearing the second half. Second half? It began to dawn on the young man that perhaps he made a big mistake. What was the second half? The mentor spoke slowly to make his point. The second half, more important than the first, is the realization that if a light bulb goes off frequently, then sooner or later it will be replaced with one that is more reliable. Who wants a light bulb that no one can count on to provide illumination? A story by Suzuki Roshi. Once upon a time, a professor went to a Zen master. He asked him to explain the meaning of Zen. The master quietly poured a cup of tea. The cup was full, but he continued to pour. The professor could not stand this any longer, so he questioned the master impatiently. "Why do you keep pouring when the cup is full?" "I want to point out to you," the master said, "that you are similarly attempting to understand Zen while your mind is full. First, empty your mind of preconceptions before you attempt to understand Zen. If your mind is empty, it is always ready for anything. It is open to everything. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few." Once upon a time, there was a young, athletic boy hungry for success, for whom winning was everything. And success was measured just by winning. One day, the boy was preparing himself for a running competition in his small village, himself and 2 other young boys to compete. A large crowd had gathered to witness the sporting spectacle, and a wise old man, upon hearing of the little boy, had traveled far to bear witness also. The race commenced, looking like a level heat at the finishing line. But sure enough, the boy dug deep and called on his determination, strength, and power. He took the winning line and was first. The crowd was ecstatic and cheered and waved at the boy. The wise man remained still and calm, expressing no sentiment. The little boy, however, felt proud and important. A second race was called, and 2 new, young, fit challengers came forward to run with the little boy. The race was started, and sure enough, the little boy came through and finished first once again. The crowd was ecstatic again and cheered and waved at the boy. The wise man remained still and calm, again expressing no sentiment. The little boy, however, felt proud and important. Another race, pleaded the little boy. The wise old man stepped forward and presented the little boy with 2 new challengers, an elderly frail lady and a blind man. "What is this?" quizzed the little boy. "This is no race," he exclaimed. "Race," said the wise man. The race was started, and the boy was the only finisher. The other 2 challengers left standing at the starting line. The little boy was ecstatic. He raised his arms in delight. The crowd, however, were silent, showing no sentiment toward the little boy. "What has happened? Why not do the people join in my success?" he asked the wise old man. "Race again," replied the wise man. "This time, finish together, all 3 of you. Finish together," continued the wise man. The little boy thought a little, stood in the middle of the blind man and the frail old lady, and then took the 2 challengers by the hand. The race began, and the little boy walked slowly, ever so slowly to the finishing line and crossed it. The crowd were ecstatic and cheered and waved at the boy. The wise man smiled, gently nodding his head. The little boy felt proud and important. "Old man, I understand not. Who are the crowd cheering for? Which one of us three?" asked the little boy. The wise old man looked into the little boy's eyes, placing his hands on the boy's shoulders, and replied softly, "Little boy, for this race you have won much more than in any race you have ever ran before. And for this race, the crowd cheer not for any winner."
One day a son goes to his father and says, "Father, what is the value of my life?" And the father gives him the stone and says, "Son, if you want to know the value of your life, take this stone and go to the market. And if anyone asks the price, don't say a word and raise up 2 fingers." So the boy does as his father says and goes to the market. He wanders around, and suddenly an old woman approaches him and says, "How much is this stone?" And the boy doesn't say a word, just raises up 2 fingers. And the woman says, $2? I'll take it." The son is surprised and runs back to his father. He says, "Father, there was an old woman at the market. She wanted to give me $2 for the stone." And the father says, "Son, the next place I want you to go is to the museum. And if anyone asks the price, don't say a word and raise up 2 fingers." So the son takes the stone and goes to the museum. After about 20 minutes, there is a middle-aged man in a suit who approaches the boy. He says, "Sir, how much is this stone?" The boy doesn't say a word and raises up 2 fingers. And the man says, $200? I'll take it." The boy is surprised and runs home to his father. Father, a man in the museum wanted to buy the stone for $200. "Okay, son. The last place I want you to take the stone is a precious stone store. Walk inside with the stone, and if anyone asks the price, don't say a word, just raise up 2 fingers." So the son runs off into the precious stone store. After finding it, he walks inside and there is an old man at the counter. And as the old man sees the stone, he jumps up and screams, "Oh my God, you have the stone I've been looking for my whole life. What do you want for it? How much is it?" The boy doesn't say a word and raises up 2 fingers. And the old man says, $200,000? I'll take it." The boy can't believe it. He jumps up and runs to his father. He says, Father, the old man at the precious stone store wanted to give me $200,000 for the stone." You see, son, you understand now the value of your life? Life is all about where you place yourself. You can decide if you want to be a $2 stone or a $200,000 stone. There are some people who love you and for whom you are everything. And some people will just use you as a commodity, and for them you will be worth nothing. So it is upon you, my son, to decide the value of your life.
One day, while the Buddha was preaching his doctrine for the conversion of the world in the neighborhood of Savatthi, a man of great wealth who suffered from many ailments came to him with clasped hands and said, "O Lord Buddha, pardon me for my want of respect in not saluting you as I ought to, but I suffer greatly from obesity, excessive drowsiness and other complaints, so that I cannot move without pain." The Tathagata, seeing the luxuries with which the man was surrounded, asked him, "Have you a desire to know the cause of your ailments?" And when the wealthy man expressed his willingness to learn, Buddha said, "There are 5 things which produce the condition of which you complain: opulent dinners, love of sleep, hankering after pleasure, thoughtlessness, and lack of occupation.
exercise self-control at your meals and take on yourself some duties that will exercise your abilities and make you useful to your fellow men. In following this advice, you will prolong your life." The rich man remembered the words of the Buddha, and after some time, having recovered his lightness and youthfulness, he returned to the world-honored one, and coming this time without horses and luxuries, he said to him, "Master, you have cured my bodily ailments. I come now to seek enlightenment of the mind." And Buddha said, "The worldling nourishes his body, but the wise man nourishes his mind. He who indulges in the satisfaction of his appetite works his own destruction, but he who walks in the path will have both the salvation from evil and a prolongation of life." Once upon a time there was a very lazy man in a village. He would keep trying to get food without doing any hard work. One morning, while wandering around the countryside, he decided to steal some apples to eat. As soon as he tried to pick an apple, a farmer saw him and started coming at him. The lazy man got scared and ran into the forest nearby to hide. While walking through the forest, he saw an old wolf with only 2 legs. The man wondered how that wolf was surviving with only 2 legs. The wolf could not run or feed himself, and there were threats from other animals. But he was happily crawling around. Suddenly he saw a lion coming towards the wolf with a piece of meat in its mouth. The lazy man climbed up the tree to save himself, but the wolf stayed because he could not run away. But the man's eyes were on stalks as he saw the lion left the piece of meat for the wolf to eat. The lazy man felt happy seeing God's play. He started to think that God always has a plan set to take care of his creations. Then he believed that God must have something planned for him too. So he left to find a place to sit and wait for someone to feed him. He waited. He waited. He waited there for 2 days without any food. Finally, he couldn't bear the hunger and left. He met an old sage on the way. He told everything to the sage and asked, "Oh, wise one, God showed mercy to the crippled wolf, but why didn't he show mercy to me?" The old sage answered, "It's true that God has a plan for everyone. You are obviously a part of his plan. But son, you took his signs in the wrong way. He didn't want you to be like the wolf. He wanted you to be like the lion." Hi, this is Dare to Do Motivation, and this is a story about letting go. Once upon a time, 2 Buddhist monks were on a journey. One of them was a senior monk, and the other was a junior monk. And during their journey, they approached a raging river, and on the riverbank stood a young lady. She was clearly concerned about how she would get to the other side of the river without drowning. The junior monk walked straight past her without giving it a thought, and he crossed the river. The senior monk, however, picked up the woman and carried her across the river. He placed her down, they parted ways, and on they went with their journey. As the journey went on, the senior monk could see some concern on the junior monk's mind. He asked what was wrong. And the junior monk replied, "How could you carry her like that? You know we can't touch women. It's against our way of life." And the senior monk answered, "I left the woman at the river's edge a long way back. Why are you still carrying her?" The senior monk had broken rules, but for good reason. Once the purpose was fulfilled, he put her down and continued on. He never gave it a further thought. The junior monk, however, he didn't touch the woman, but he had brought up the actions of the senior monk when it was an action of the past. Therefore, the junior monk was carrying the burden of what the senior monk had done as an emotional baggage. One day, Buddha was in an assembly when a man walked in looking furious. He thought Buddha was doing something wrong. He was drawing a huge crowd and people would just go to him and meditate. He was a restless businessman, and he had found that his children were spending their time with Buddha when they could have engaged themselves in business, making more money and ensuring their livelihood. He felt that spending 4 hours of their day seated next to someone whose eyes were always closed was a complete waste of time. So the father of the family was very upset, and he said, "I am going to teach this man a lesson." With anger in his heart, he walked confidently up to Buddha. As soon as he approached Buddha, all of his thoughts disappeared, but the anger in him did not dissipate. He was shaking and he found himself speechless. Since he was unable to express his emotions in words, he simply spat on Buddha's face. Buddha, in return, simply smiled. His disciples who were sitting with him were furious. They wanted to react and were ready to jump, but the Buddha's presence didn't allow them to do so. They just couldn't believe someone could behave in such a reprehensible manner with the Buddha. But they couldn't say anything, and this man could not stay longer either. He noticed his action had not drawn any reaction from the people around him, and the Buddha had simply smiled in return. A few minutes later he thought, "If I stay longer, I will burst, I will explode." So he walked away. Once he returned home, he couldn't erase the image of the smiling Buddha from his mind. For the first time in his life, he had met someone who had such an extraordinary reaction to such a disrespectful act. He could not sleep all night, and his whole body underwent a transformation. He was shivering, shaking. He felt as though his world had collapsed. So the next day he got up and went and fell at Buddha's feet and said, "Please forgive me. I did not know what I was doing." To which Buddha replied, "I cannot excuse you." Everyone, including Buddha's disciples, were shocked at this reaction. All his life, Buddha had been so compassionate. He had accepted everyone in his ashram, regardless of their past. And now he was telling this businessman that he could not excuse his behavior. Buddha looked around and found everyone to be in a state of shock. So he explained, "Why should I excuse you when you have not done anything? What wrong have you done that I should excuse your behavior?" The businessman replied, "Yesterday I came to this assembly, and in my anger, I spat on your face. I am the same person, it is me." Buddha said, "That person is not here anymore. If I ever meet the person on whom you spat, I'll tell him to excuse you. For me, to the person who's right here in this moment, you are wonderful. You have done nothing wrong." Once upon a time, a disciple asked his master, "How can I calm my mind?" The master said, "I am too busy to talk to you right now. Why not consult your first Dharma brother?" He did as he was told and asked the same question. The first Dharma brother said, "I have a headache. I can't talk now. Why not talk to the second Dharma brother?" But the second Dharma brother said, "I have a stomach ache. Why don't you just go and talk to our Dharma master?" So he went back to his master and complained, "Nobody told me anything. Nobody gave me any answers." But the master said to him reprovingly, "You really are a stupid fool. Everybody has been giving you the answer." Because of this, the disciple reached enlightenment. In ancient times, a king had his men place a huge rock on a roadway. He then hid in the bushes and watched to see if anyone would move the rock out of the way. Some of the king's wealthiest merchants and courtiers passed by and simply walked around it. Many blamed the king for not keeping the roads clear, but none of them did anything about getting the stone removed. And so it happened that one day, a peasant came along carrying vegetables. Upon approaching the rock, the peasant laid down his burden and tried to push the rock out of the way. After much pushing and straining, he finally managed. After the peasant went back to pick up his vegetables, he noticed a purse lying in the road where the rock had been. The purse contained many gold coins and a note from the king explaining that the gold was for the person who removed the rock from the road. There were 2 frogs. These frogs were best friends, like brothers. One was fat, the other one was thin. But they got along well, nevertheless. Always looking for trouble and adventure, they were hopping around the countryside when suddenly they saw a farmer leave a bucket in front of a stable. Curious as those 2 were, they went over to see what was in the bucket. Because the bucket was too big, they couldn't see what was inside, and so they just jumped in. The bucket was filled with milk, but they couldn't get out as the sides were too slippery. So they were just swimming around. They swam and they swam, but still couldn't get out. After 1 hour, the fat frog said to his thin friend frog, "Brother frog, there's no use paddling any longer. We're just going to drown. We will die. It is inevitable. So we might as well give up. There is no point. No one will come and save us. Nor will we turn into butterflies and fly away. We are doomed." But his friend replied, "Hold on, brother fat frog. Keep paddling. Somebody will get us out, eventually. As long as we don't give up, we won't drown and we can't die." And so they continued paddling for hours. As the sun started to go down, the fat frog said, "I can't go on any longer. There is no sense in doing it because we are going to drown anyway. What's the use? I have given up already." And the fat frog stopped swimming. He gave up, and he drowned in the milk, and he died. The skinny frog was devastated that he had lost his best friend since pond days, and couldn't hold back his tears. But more determined than ever, he started paddling even faster and faster to numb the pain. Suddenly, at around midnight, he noticed that he had turned the milk into butter because he had been paddling for so long, and so he was able to jump out of the bucket. He let out a joyous yell and jumped back into the woods. He was alive. He had made it. But he was also sad because he lost his best friend. He knew that he hadn't been able to help his fat friend. Because once his friend had made the decision to give up, he was doomed. You see, we never lose as long as we don't give up. Years later, he married a frog lady and had lots of frog sons. He named them all after his fat frog friend to keep his memory alive and because he missed him so dearly. And every night he would tell his frog children the story of the fat frog who gave up, so that they would never give up in life. See, life is hard, but you have to be harder and smart. Always be grateful for what you have and never give up. Because as long as you don't give up, you can't lose. One day, a countryman knocked hard on a monastery door. When the monk tending the gates opened up, he was given a magnificent bunch of grapes. "Brother, these are the finest my vineyard has produced. I've come to bear them as a gift." "Thank you. I will take them to the abbot immediately. He'll be delighted with this offering." "No, I brought them for you." "For me?" The monk blushed, for he didn't think he deserved such a fine gift of nature. "Yes, yes," insisted the man, "for whenever I knock on the door, it is you who opens it. When I needed help, because the crop was destroyed by drought, you gave me a piece of bread and a cup of wine every day. I hope this bunch of grapes will bring you a little of the sun's love, the rain's beauty, and the miracle of God, for it is He who made it grow so fine." The monk held the grapes and spent the entire morning admiring them. They were really beautiful. Because of this, he decided to deliver the gift to the abbot, who had always encouraged him with words of wisdom. The abbot was very pleased with the grapes, but he recalled that there was a sick brother in the monastery and thought, "I'll give the grapes to him. Who knows, they may bring some joy to his life." And that is what he did. But the grapes didn't stay in the sick monk's room for long, for he reflected, "The cook has looked after me for so long, feeding me only the best meals. I'm sure he will enjoy these." When the cook appeared at lunch to bring him his meal, he presented him with the grapes. "They are for you," said the sick monk. "Since you are always coming into contact with that which nature produces, you will know exactly what to do with this work of God." The cook was amazed at the beauty of the grapes and showed his assistant how perfect they were. So perfect, he thought to himself, that no one would appreciate them more than the monastery priest, since he was responsible for the Holy Sacrament, and many at the monastery considered him a holy man. He would be best qualified to value this marvel of nature. The monastery priest, in turn, gave the grapes as a gift to the youngest novice, that he might understand that the work of God is in the smallest details of creation. When the novice received them, his heart was filled with the glory of the Lord, for he had never seen such beautiful grapes. Just then, he remembered the first time he came to the monastery, and of the person who had opened the gates for him. It was that gesture which allowed him to be among his community of people who knew how to value the wonders of life. And so, just before nightfall, he took the grapes to the monk at the gates. "Eat and enjoy them," he said, "for you spend most of your time alone here, and these grapes will make you very happy." Once upon a time, there was a boy whose family was very wealthy. One day, his father took him on a trip to the country, where he aimed to show his son how poor people live. So they arrived at a farm of a very poor family, as he considered. They spent there several days. On their return, the father asked the son if he liked the trip. "Oh, it was great, father," the boy replied. "Did you notice how poor people live?" "Yes, I did," said the boy. The father asked his son to tell in more details about his impressions from their trip. "Well, we have only one dog,"
and they have 4 of them. In our garden there is a pool, while they have a river that has no end. We've got expensive lanterns, but they have the stars above their heads at night. We have the balcony, and they have the whole horizon. We have only a small piece of land, while they have the endless fields. We buy food, but they grow it. We have a high fence for protection of our property, and they don't need it, as their friends protect them. The father was stunned. He couldn't say a word. Then the boy added, "Thank you, Father, for letting me see how poor we are."
One day Buddha was walking from one town to another with a few of his followers. This was in the initial days. While they were traveling, they happened to pass a lake. They stopped there, and Buddha told one of his disciples, "I am thirsty. Please get me some water from that lake over there." The disciple walked up to the lake. When he reached it, he noticed that some people were washing clothes in the water, and right at that moment, a bull cart started crossing the lake right at the edge of it. As a result, the water became very muddy, very turbid. The disciple thought, "How can I give this muddy water to Buddha to drink?" So he came back and told the Buddha, "The water in there is very muddy. I don't think it is fit to drink." "So," the Buddha said, "let us take a little rest here by the tree." After about half an hour, again, Buddha asked the same disciple to go back to the lake and get him some water to drink. The disciple obediently went back to the lake. This time he found that the lake had absolutely clear water in it. The mud had settled down, and the water above it looked fit to be had. So he collected some water in a pot and brought it to the Buddha. The Buddha looked at the water, and then he looked up at the disciple and said, "See, you let the water be, and the mud settled down on its own. You got clear water. It didn't require any effort." Once upon a time there lived a very wise man. He was the mayor of a local village. Everyone respected him, and his views and opinions were well regarded. Many people came to him seeking for advice. His son, however, was very lazy and wasted his time sleeping and spending time with his friends. No amount of advice or threat made any difference to him. He would not change at all. The years passed, and with time faded the youth of the wise man. As he grew older, he began to worry about his son's future. He recognized that he had to give his son something so that he could take care of himself and his family to be in the future. So one day the wise man called his son to his room and said, "My son, you are no more a kid now. You must learn to take responsibilities and understand life. I want you to find the real purpose of your life. And once you find it, remember it always, and you will lead a life full of happiness and joy forever." He then handed his son a bag. When the son opened the bag, he was surprised to see 4 pairs of clothes, one for each season. There also were some raw foods, grains, lentils, little money, and a map. His father continued, "I want you to go find a treasure. I have drawn a map of the place where the treasure is hidden. You need to go and find it." The son loved this idea. For the first time, he thought that his father had a good idea for him. So the next day, he eagerly set out on a journey to find the treasure. He had to travel really far across borders, forests, plateaus, and mountains. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Along the way, he met a lot of people. He was helped by some with food and by some with shelter. He also came across robbers who tried to rob him, and people who tried to cheat him. He experienced the best and the worst of humanity on his way. Slowly the season changed, and so did the landscapes along with it. When the weather was unpleasant, he halted for the day and continued his journey when the weather cleared. Finally, after a long year, he reached his destination. It was a cliff. The map showed the treasure being placed below the cliff under the tree. Upon spotting the tree, he began to dig the ground. He searched and searched, around it, under it, over it, but found nothing. He spent 2 days looking and digging for the treasure. By the third day, he was so exhausted that he decided to leave. Disappointed over his father's lie, he headed back to his home. On his way back, he experienced the same changing landscapes and seasons. This time, however, he halted to enjoy the blooming flowers in spring and the dancing birds in monsoon. He stayed in places only to watch the sun set in paradise or to enjoy pleasant summer evenings. Since the supplies he carried were over by then, he learned to hunt and make arrangements for his meals. He also learned how to sew his clothes and shelter himself. He was now able to determine the hour of the day by the position of the sun and plan his journey accordingly. He also learned how to protect himself from wild animals. He met the same people who had helped him earlier. This time he stayed a few days with them and helped them in some or the other way to repay them. He realized how nice they were to an ordinary passerby who had nothing to offer to them in return. When he reached home, he realized it had been 2 years since he left the place. He walked straight into his father's room. "Father," he said. The father immediately jumped to his feet and hugged his son. "So how was your journey, my son? Did you find the treasure?" he asked. "The journey was fascinating, father, but forgive me, for I wasn't able to find the treasure. Maybe somebody took it before I reached." He surprised himself by what he just said. He wasn't angry at his father. Instead, he was asking for forgiveness. "There wasn't any treasure in the first place, my son," the father answered, smiling. "But why did you send me to find it then?" the son asked. "I will surely tell you why, but first you tell me, how was your journey to the place? Did you enjoy it?" "Of course not, father. I had no time. I was worried someone else would find the treasure before I did. I was in a hurry to reach the cliff. But I did enjoy the journey on my way back home. I made many friends and witnessed miracles every day. I learned so many different skills and the art of survival. There was so much I learned that it made me forget the pain of not finding the treasure." "Exactly, my son. I want you to lead your life with a goal. But if you remain too focused on the goal, then you will miss out the real treasures of life." Once upon a time, a country was ruled by a king who had no son to succeed to the throne. Since the king was getting old, he wanted to select a suitable successor to rule the country. The king sent out notices throughout his country. The notices invited every qualified young man in the country for an interview with the king. The outcome of the interview would decide a possible successor to the throne. The only qualification for the candidate was that they should have immense love for their fellow human beings. Every young man across the country was very excited at the possibility of being the ruler of the country. A poor young man from a remote village also read the notice and started to prepare for an interview with the king. The man was a kind man, a hard-working man, but he was very poor due to various circumstances. The man had no good clothes to be presentable in the sight of the king, so the young man worked really hard and saved some money to buy him proper clothes and supplies to support him for the long journey to the palace. After he got his supplies and a proper attire for the interview, the young man set out on his quest. He traveled many days and had almost completed the journey when he came upon a poor beggar by the side of the road. The poor beggar sat trembling in the cold, covered only in tattered rags. The beggar extended his arms and pleaded for help. His weak voice croaked, "I am hungry and cold. Please help me, sir." The young man was so moved by the pathetic condition of the beggar
that he immediately stripped his new attire and offered it to him. He also provided him with his very limited food he had carried for the journey. The beggar thanked the man 1,000 times, but since the man had given up his good clothes to the beggar, he was a bit hesitant to go for the interview. He, however, gathered enough courage to enter the palace in his old dirty clothes. Upon his arrival at the palace, a king's attendant showed him the way to the great hall. After a short rest to clean off the journey's grime, the man was admitted to the throne room for the interview. The young man bowed low as the king entered the room. When he raised his eyes, he gasped in astonishment as he noticed that the king looked very similar to the beggar he had met on the way. The king saw the shock in the man's eye and said, "Yes, I was the beggar you met on your way. But why did you dress up like a beggar? You are a king." "Well, why did you do this to me?" the young man stammered after gaining some composure. "Because I had to be sure that you had a good heart and you genuinely love your fellow human beings," said the king. "I knew that if I came to you as a king, you would have done anything to impress me. But that way, I would never have known what is truly in your heart. The generosity and love to the one in need without expecting anything in return is the sign of a great heart. Looking at your love, generosity towards the beggar man proved that you sincerely love your fellow human beings. This country needs a leader who would work for the welfare of all of the nation, not just the ones who would offer and cater to the throne. You have proven that you are the right person to be my successor," promised the king. When the Buddha had remained as long as he wished at Ambapali's grove, he went to Beluva, near Vesali. There the Blessed One addressed the brethren and said, "Mendicants, take up your abode for the rainy season round about Vesali, each one according to the place where his friends and near companions may live. I shall enter on the rainy season here at Beluva." When Buddha had thus entered on the rainy season, there fell on him a dire sickness, and sharp pains came on him even to death. But the Blessed One, mindful and self-possessed, bore his ailments without complaint. Then this thought occurred to the Buddha: it would not be right for me to pass away from life without addressing the disciples, without taking leave of the order. Let me now, by a strong effort of the will, subdue this sickness and keep my hold on life until my time has come. And Buddha, by a strong effort of the will, subdued the sickness and kept his hold on life until his time should come, and the sickness abated. Thus Buddha began to recover, and when he had quite got rid of the sickness, he went out from the monastery and sat down on a seat spread out in the open air. And his beloved Ananda, accompanied by many other disciples, approached where the Blessed One was, saluted him, and taking a seat respectfully on one side, said, "I have beheld, Lord, how the Blessed One was in health, and I have beheld how the Blessed One had to suffer. And though at the sight of the sickness of the Blessed One, my body became weak as a creeper, and the horizon became dim to me, and my faculties were no longer clear, yet notwithstanding, I took some little comfort from the thought that the Blessed One would not pass away from existence, till at last he had left instructions as touching the order." Buddha addressed Ananda in behalf of the order, saying, "What, then, Ananda, does the order expect of me? I have preached the truth without making any distinction between doctrine hidden or revealed. For in respect of the truth, Ananda, the Tathagata has no such thing as the closed fist of a teacher who keeps some things back. Surely, Ananda, should there be anyone who harbor the thought, "It is I who will lead the brotherhood," or "The order is dependent on me," he should lay down instructions in any matter concerning the order. Now the Tathagata, Ananda, thinks not that it is he who should lead the brotherhood, or that the order is dependent on him. Why then should the Tathagata leave instructions in any matter concerning the order? I am now grown old, Ananda, and full of years. My journey is drawing to its close. I have reached the sum of my days. I am turning 80 years of age. Just as a worn-out cart cannot be made to move along without much difficulty, so the body of the Tathagata can only be kept going with much additional care. It is only when the Tathagata, Ananda, ceasing to attend to any outward thing, becomes plunged in that devout meditation of heart, which is concerned with no bodily object. It is only then that the body of the Tathagata is at ease. Therefore, Ananda, be you lamps to yourselves, rely on yourselves, and do not rely on external help. Hold fast to the truth as a lamp. Seek salvation alone in the truth. Look not for assistance to anyone besides yourselves. And how, Ananda, can a brother be a lamp to himself, rely on himself only, and not on any external help, holding fast to the truth as his lamp and seeking salvation in the truth alone, looking not for assistance to anyone besides himself? Herein, Ananda, let a brother, as he dwells in the body, so regard the body that he, being strenuous, thoughtful, and mindful, may, while in the world, overcome the grief which arises from the body's cravings. While subject to sensations, let him continue so to regard the sensations that he, being strenuous, thoughtful, and mindful, may, while in the world, overcome the grief which arises from the sensations. And so also when he thinks or reasons or feels, let him so regard his thoughts that being strenuous, thoughtful, and mindful, he may, while in the world, overcome the grief which arises from the craving due to ideas or to reasoning or to feeling. Those who, either now or after I am dead, shall be lamps to themselves, relying on themselves only, and not relying on any external help, but holding fast to the truth as their lamp, and seeking their salvation in the truth alone, and shall not look for assistance to anyone besides themselves. It is they, Ananda, among my bhikkhus, who shall reach the very topmost height. But they must be anxious to learn.